Hey everyone, welcome to the program, WRSA Radio. I'm your host, Grenadier One. As always, I hope you are having a good week, although I know it's hard to do that with what we are facing. Now, I'm going to jump right into this show today because I don't have a whole lot of time, but I wanted to get a program out for you guys this week. So here we go. So the title of the show this week is Incompetence Has Its Limits. Now, some of you may pick up on what I mean here, but let me explain it for everybody. I'm sure that you've heard the saying that you should not ascribe to malice what can be explained by incompetence. Well, what does that exactly mean? It means just because something bad happens, it does not mean that it was intentional. More specifically, it does not mean that because something bad happens in our lives, that it was the result of some, nefarious plot by a hidden conspiracy or something like that. Well, as I said, incompetence has its limits. I think it should be clear as day for anyone with eyes to see that we're not dealing with incompetence when it comes to the U.S. government and the governments of the Western world. We are dealing with deliberate actions and with deliberate malice. I think we have to say, going forward, at least more openly, that our government is evil. It's not the government of the past. It's not even a shadow of the government from the past. It's been this way for a very long time, but most people just didn't see it. And I think this week it should be clear to anyone that those days are gone. Anyone who is still clinging to the notion that there's a political solution to this is just whistling past the graveyard at this point. Well, so what exactly changed? Well, nothing really, at least in terms of their actions. They're doing the things that they've always done, but something did change in their messaging. Something very ominous. And when you recognize a simple truth, what was communicated to us this week should terrify you. And it should fill you with resolve, a resolve to resist, and resist with all that's within your power, and make them pay a heavy toll for what they have planned for us. Now, this week you've probably heard the term transition more than a few times. And that's because this is the message that they intended to send to us. And right on cue, as I have told you before in the past on previous episodes, there was a sacrifice to accompany this messaging, but more on that a little bit later. So what do I mean by this messaging? Well, this week our lizard overlords gathered in Davos, Switzerland to eat small Latin children and plan whatever nefarious stuff they have in store for us over the next year or so. And during these meetings, they sometimes let the press in and they allow them to, interview people and take away these approved statements and approved information that they want disseminated. And what they told us this week that was that we must prepare for a difficult transition into a new world. In other words, their new world as they see it, and they intend to guide us and force us into their new world that they intend to inflict upon us. Now, if there was any doubt that the lizards were somehow out of step with our governments, we saw old Sleepy Joe get in front of his teleprompter and spew forth the message that America must go through a difficult transition to a new nation and a new way of doing things. And he's talking about, the fuel prices and the food shortages and the food prices going up, all of these things. And he says, it's a difficult transition. Which should tell you that they don't have any intention of doing anything about all of those things. They intend to inflict that upon us. Now, how does that sit with you? For me, it's that's going to be a hard no, dog. I want none of that. I don't want this transition that you're foisting upon us. Because hidden down a little deep in the layers of that messaging is the fact that these people intend to kill as many of us as they can get away with. See, their new world does not include all of us. It only includes those that they can enslave and bend to their will. And if you're opposed to that and resist that, as well you should, well, they intend to starve you into either the ground or submission, whichever one comes first. They don't care which one. And who they can't starve, they intend to place so many barriers into the path of your life that you will comply or die. They intend to eliminate personal vehicles because they intend to herd us into these urban and suburban areas. That's the whole thing with this fuel. You know, the fuel costs, fuel shortages, fuel costs just going through the roof. They're doing that intentionally. That is being inflicted upon us because they don't want us to drive. They'll transport people around in large public transportation or in these driverless cars that are owned in these public-private partnerships with companies like Uber, and you won't own a car. And that's so they can keep you contained and keep track of where you're going. They will know everywhere that you are moving and where you're going because they will control your transportation. And they intend to control the food supply so that they can starve us into compliance. They can create these artificial shortages when anyone, happens to have a bad social credit score. A whole block of buildings can be starved by cutting off the food supply to them. They'll distribute some kind of bug and plant-based gruel, and they'll expect us to eat it, and they'll keep all the real food for themselves. They'll eat healthy, with real food, and we have to eat some type of processed junk, even worse than the processed junk that we already eat. And they'll control your medical care and your water, and on and on and on it will go. And truth be told, they will likely inject some form of chemical into that food and water, which will make us happy, so we won't revolt. We'll just be blissfully unaware. We will own nothing. We'll eat bugs, and we'll live in the pod, and we'll be happy. That's their plan. They've told us this plan. They've communicated this to us. And that's what they intend to do to us. They not only did they tell you, they somehow managed to make this announcement coincidentally the same week a very troubled young man committed an atrocity at a Texas elementary school. And I can't imagine what those parents are going through. I can somewhat imagine it because of a recent loss in the family, but wow, I mean, and we've seen this time and time again, these things happening to young children. As the week went on, we began to get some more details on this thing, and it looks very much like this young man was going through a mental health crisis that was related to his gender identity. In fact, you could say that he was going through a very difficult and painful transition in his life. Now, doesn't that sound very convenient? Almost like that act was a symbolic sacrifice to set in motion what these elites have planned. That's how I see it anyway. I could be totally wrong. It could be absolutely, completely a coincidence. But you know what they say about coincidences. Well, what I want to move to now is to come back to this idea of transitions. Because they're not bad things. These are things that happen to us all throughout our lives. We all go through various phases of our lives and phases of our thinking, the way our thinking changes over time. That's a transition. So the elites are right about that. They're right about how we need to go through a transition. What they're wrong about is the nature of that change. What they're wrong about is how that is going to take place and who's going to be the focal point of that change. Now, folks, what I want you to do is to double your efforts on your normie friends. I want you to enact a transition on them. I want you to assist them in altering their mindset. See, we have to build mass here, and I've talked about this before, but I can't I have to keep harping on it. I can't stress this enough. If we expect to survive this, we have to have people. We have to have mass. We have to get as many people as we can to evolve their mind and their way of thinking away from this old way, this old, gone America. They need to detach themselves from that idea that there is a political solution, because there isn't one. Now, I recently moved away into old America, to be honest. It's still very much like the America that we all miss. But there are far too many people here who still cling to that idea that they can vote their way out of this. And the other day we had primary elections here in Georgia, and I drive by a polling place and there's, lines of people hanging out the door. And I just said to my wife, I said, look at those poor sods. They're completely wasting their time. This only ends when we make it end. And we can only make it end when we do to the elites what they intend to do to us. And that day will come. I promise you that day is going to come. But until it does, you have to work on people and get them to see that these people intend to kill us. This is not allegory. It's not metaphor. This is not fantasy. This is reality. This is really what they plan to do to us. Their new world does not include us. Now, it's a tall task, I know, and I know you've been working on it for a long time already. But what we have to do is hope that all of those seeds that you've been planting in the minds of these people that you care about, these normie friends that you have that you're trying to bring along, what we have to hope is that those seeds have rooted in there. And it's only the need to see some obvious message from these globalists that will finally sprout those seeds and grow them into something you can work with. Point these things out to them. Hold their eyes open. Make them see this. I cannot stress this enough. Now, that's all I got time for this week, guys. I'm off to do some training, and I'm going to be kind of in and out of contact with the internet and whatnot for a little while. So next week I won't have a show, as I mentioned on the episode last week. But till I'm available again, I want you to spend time over on the mothership and read everything that CA is posting, and go over on Gab and read everything you can there, and communicate with others of like mind. Like and subscribe, and I will see you on the next episode.